Hello everyone, welcome back to Relative Security, and let's talk about something super important while we are talking about the Essential 8. So no matter how big or complicated your system is, there are a few basic rules that every cybersecurity assessment needs to follow. Now, today we are going to talk about the assessment actually, because in the previous videos we have talked about the maturity model and what exactly is the Essential 8, but there is some part of assessment involved with the Essential 8 as well. So, coming back to the basic rules that every cybersecurity assessment needs to follow, think of them as the golden principles. But here's the thing, you still need to use your own experience and judgment to make the call. Now, sometimes organizations don't follow the recommended controls exactly. Instead, they use what we call compensating controls, alternative measures, basically alternative security measures. But here's the catch. These alternatives need to give the same level of protection as the original controls. Otherwise, you're just leaving the gaps for hackers to exploit. Otherwise, you're just leaving the gaps for hackers to exploit. And of course, you need evidence to prove your controls actually work. But here's a question. Is any evidence good enough? Not really. There are some journal guidelines about what kind of evidence counts, and that's exactly what we're going to break down next. So, once you have started your assessment of the proper implementation of the Essential 8 best practices, you need to look at the evidence. So, whatever the organization is saying that they have implemented certain controls, we need to verify that if they have implemented the controls correctly, because we need evidence to see that yes, whatever they are claiming is correct. So the first evidence quality that we're going to talk about while we are talking about the Essential 8 assessment guide is the excellent evidence quality. Excellent evidence would be testing the control in action through simulation or live testing to prove it works as expected. For example, if we talk about the application control, you attempt to run an unauthorized test application on a workstation and the system blocks it. Now, that proves that the application control rules are correctly configured and actively enforced. Why is it excellent now? Because you are seeing the control actually stop something. What it is supposed to do, it is doing it. This confirms both the presence and the effectiveness of the control itself. The next quality that we see is the good evidence. It is it is checking the live configuration through system itself to see whether it should enforce the intended control. You're not running anything, you're not seeing the control in action, you're only checking the live configuration within the system. For example, let's take the application control as an example again. So you log into the endpoint's security console and view that the applications have this application has allow listing, deny listing, these kind of settings. You can see that only approved apps are permitted to run. So this is something that you're looking at the configuration in your endpoint security console. You're not looking at the actual implementation of that application allow list. So why is it good? Because since you're not looking at the action, but still it is a good quality because it shows the right settings are in place, but you haven't tested whether it really works in practice. The next comes the fair evidence. Fair evidence is like looking at static reports, screenshots, or exports showing how the system is configured. Again, application control, you are shown a PDF report or a screenshot of the application control settings from a week ago showing only approved apps are allowed. So why is it considered fair? Because it's better than just words at least. But it could be outdated or edited, or it doesn't confirm the current live state of the behavior. life state, or behavior. In the good quality evidence, we saw that you were actually sitting on the console and looking at the live configurations, even though it wasn't action, but still the live configurations you could see. In the fair evidence quality, you are looking at the configurations, but they are not live. These are actually the screenshot or the PDF report, and they could be like a week ago, from the week ago. And lastly, there's a poor evidence as well. Poor evidence involves hearing about a control or reading it in a document without any proof that it's active or effective. For example, the IT manager, he tells you that we block all unapproved apps and points to a policy document that says application control is in place. Now, it's just a statement of intent, not proof. The control may not be implemented, working, or even configured correctly. So that is why this is considered a poor evidence. Next, we will talk about effective implementation. After completing their checks, assessors need to decide if the security fixes, mitigation strategies actually work. So, this decision will be based on whether the fixes were applied using a risk based approach, like focusing on the most important risks first, or whether the fixes were tested properly on a good mix of systems like laptops, servers, and network devices. Now, while doing the assessment, how much confidence does the assessor have from the testing and the quality of evidence provided? This will also be taken into consideration while deciding the effective implementation. So, whether there are any exceptions, things that weren't fixed, and if there are other backup controls are in place, and more importantly, whether a senior authority formally approved those exceptions. Now, let's take an example. Imagine a company had a problem. Some computers didn't have antivirus installed. The company applies a fix, like a mitigation strategy, by installing antivirus software on all machines. Now, the assessor needs to decide if the fix really worked. A risk based approach would be, did they first fix the most exposed or most important computers, like servers or managers' laptops, before less critical devices? Fixing the CEO's laptop before fixing a test machine in the lab makes more sense. And another thing would be, did they check different kinds of machines like laptops, desktops, servers to confirm antivirus was installed everywhere? Maybe they could have tested like 20 laptops, 10 desktops, and 5 servers instead of just checking one machine. The assessor needs a certain level of assurance and evidence. And how would they provide it? Assessor would see that did they just say that we have installed antivirus, or did they show screenshots, system reports, or logs that proves that actually the system has the antivirus installed on it? Higher quality evidence means more confidence. Other than the evidence, we talked about the exceptions and approvals also. Maybe one old server couldn't run the new antivirus. Instead, they put it behind a firewall and restricted access. There's a compensating control, but this exception must be approved by the management. So the assessor doesn't just tick a box. They look at how well the fixes were done, tested, and approved, and then decide if the company is secure enough. So once this assessment has been completed, the assessor has seen the evidence, then there is outcome. There are certain outcomes. For example, it was not assessed effective, alternate controls were applied, it is ineffective, or the assessor doesn't have any visibility, or the controls weren't implemented at all. So let's talk about not assessed before any other. Not assessed just means nobody's checked it yet. Like, yeah, there is a password policy written down, but no one's actually reviewed it. Then we have effective. This is the gold star. The controls are in place and they're working as well. For example, multi-factor authentication is switched on for everyone, and the tests that the assessor did, they prove it's doing its job. Alternate control is next. Basically, the recommended control isn't there, but something else is doing the same job. Like instead of buying fancy encryption software, the company just uses the full disk encryption built into Windows or Mac. Same result, just a different tool. So that is alternate controls. Now, these are like, so let's talk about ineffective. This one is tricky. The control exists, so the company says that they have implemented the control. The assessor can see, yes, the control exists, but it actually doesn't do anything. It actually doesn't do what it's supposed to do, like having antivirus installed, but it's not updated in ages. So it's useless against the new threats, new viruses. So that would be considered ineffective even though the control is in place because the control is not doing its job, what it is intended to do. Another one is no visibility. This is when the assessor just can't see what's happening. The company says, trust us, we have intrusion detection, but then they don't provide any logs or screenshots. So, yeah, if there is no proof, that means there is no visibility for the assessor to assess the control. The next is not implemented, which is the most easy, I would say. They just didn't put the control in at all, like deciding not to enable email filtering because they think it's a waste of money. That would be they haven't implemented the control, which was like the required. And finally, not applicable. This is when the control just doesn't make sense for that system. Like asking about Wi-Fi security when the company doesn't even have Wi-Fi. So they can simply say it's not applicable. So these are the categories which are the outcomes of any assessment for the essential aid. It's basically a report card for security controls from working great all the way down to not even relevant. Now, sometimes system owners say, oh, we are not going to implement this control because we have accepted the risk. For example, we don't want to roll out application control or we'll skip multi-factor authentication. Here's the catch. If they don't have proper backup measures, what we call compensating controls, then guess what? The strategy is counted as not implemented. You can't just wave that we accept the risk flag and be done. Think of it like if your car has no seat belts, you can't just say I accept the risk of crashing and still pass a road safety test. Now, without an alternative security feature, you fail. Now, here's the second big point. If a system owner wants to claim they have implemented if a system owner wants to claim they have implemented a mitigation strategy, all the controls inside that strategy have to be either effective or replaced with a valid alternate control. So let's say a mitigation strategy requires three things: strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and application control. If two are working great, but one is ineffective, you don't get credit for the whole strategy. And that means you can't claim you have reached that maturity level. Now, what about exceptions? Yeah, sometimes exceptions are real. Maybe an old server can't support multi-factor authentication. In that case, assessor looks at the compensating controls. Maybe they put that server behind a firewall, limit who can access it, and monitor it super closely. But here's the rule. All of this needs to be formally documented and approved by the right authority. The paperwork should say what the exception is and why it exists, what compensating controls are in place, how long these controls will last, when they will be reviewed again, what the risk rating was before and after putting them in place, and of course, who officially signed off on accepting the remaining risk. Just like car inspections, exceptions shouldn't go on forever. Usually they should be reviewed at least once a year. So you can reach your target maturity level even if you have got some exceptions as long as you handle them properly, put in compensating controls, and get formal approval. Because in cybersecurity, it's not just about shortcuts, it's about showing whatever approach you take still keeps your system safe. I hope you understand the the need of this assessment guide and the need of understanding what the assessment outcome is, what were the evidence qualities that we need to keep in mind when we are preparing ourselves or when we are implementing Essential 8,